stress is our internal response to something external to us. I don't think stress is a bad thing, and it's about knowing when to push and knowing when to pull back.
Welcome to another Mind Titans podcast. Today I got Paris Baker with us. And Paris is a registered psychologist. She's passionate about helping people manage their stress, their overwhelm, optimize health, performance. I think she has a great understanding of the bidirectional influence between our body and our mind. And she focuses a lot of her work on the development of internal resources to navigate challenges and create peak performance in a very sustainable manner. And she'll tell us a little bit about the work that she has done across the different spectrums. And I think the one thing I think is cool about Paris is that she integrates both the mind, the body, and also do it in a very simple manner so that we can achieve the peak performance we want, but also do it in a very consistent fashion. That's the official bio for Paris. But, I just think just my interaction with Paris is she has a lot of passion for helping people. She has a lot of passion and a lot of study, a lot of just detailed analysis in this particular area. I think when I met her in New Zealand and heard her share, I just really thought like, wow, here's a person that loves this field of work, that really has studied this a lot and really wants to find out how she can help people grow. I think that's one, how they can manage stress and how they can be their best every single day. So welcome, Paris.
Thank you. Lovely to be. Lovely to be here and lovely to see you again.
That's awesome. Paris, let's talk a little bit about your understanding of stress. I think just me encountering you and the work that Dave put around calm, pressure, performance. Before that, I never really acknowledged that I was stressed. I was one of these people, when you ask me when I was stressed, I would say no, because I thought that saying that I was stressed was perhaps weak, or perhaps I was also unconscious or so. So when was the first time you discovered that stress really affects performance and stress really is a factor and it had to be acknowledged as opposed to be suppressed?
Yeah, great question. I suppose throughout, I've always played sport growing up. I've always, for example, throughout my degree, the Master's of Psychology was pretty stressful. And there were various times throughout my life where I would encounter a quite challenging situation and I would either run towards it or run away from it. And I suppose, the first kind of time where I started to reconceptualize stress was when I went to New Zealand to PIHA, and I met with Dave. And he kind of framed it as stress is our internal response to something external to us. There's a stressor that is outside of us and a stress that is internal. The stress that is internal is something that we have control over or that we can respond either effectively to or ineffectively to. For me, I had a long-standing history of anxiety. And so often when stress or anxiety would show up, I would push it down, push it away. It was kind of one of those things, like you said, I don't want people to know that I'm anxious, or I don't want people to know that I'm struggling in some way. This had this kind of, inverse effect in which it would make that anxiety or that stress show up more intensely. It would kind of permeate in different parts of my life. Going to Dave and having that kind of 3-day intensive with him, which you're about to embark on, aren't you, Melvin?
Yeah. In a few days.
Yeah. So you're in for a treat. That 3-day intensive with him was really awesome because it put me into some practical situations where, for example, something as simple as holding your breath underwater. That brings up a lot of those internal bits and pieces in terms of self-talk or struggle with, this is really stressful, this is really overwhelming, I can't do this, all of those pieces, the physiological pieces as well as the psychological pieces. So I suppose those 3 days really started to hone in on how I responded to and what my relationship was with stress. And I think that is the key thing. What's our relationship with stress?
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. So what have you discovered as a change between the Paris from before, where, maybe there was certain mindsets, attitudes towards stress, and the Paris of now, when, because I don't think we can eliminate stress from our lives, but we can only change the way we view it and regard it. So what has changed for you?
I don't think stress is a bad thing. Before, I think it was very much around, okay, well, this is stressful, this is challenging. I had quite high standards of myself, so that perfectionism would kind of seep in. And those perfectionistic expectations would stop me from seeking out things that I felt were beyond my reach. Where I felt like I wasn't going to measure up to those really high standards I held for myself, I would shy away from the challenge. And that has really shifted and really changed. So my approach to things is more of a learning-based approach. And it's kind of like, okay, well, that stress response might show up, but I can manage it. It's sweet. I'm, in charge and I'm in control. And even where things do feel like, oh, this is big, this is hard, in my mind, I'm like, sweet, I'm going to learn something from this. Even if I stuff up, even if I fail, that's still a wonderful experience to then incorporate into how do I do it differently next time. And, that learning piece then allows you to reconceptualize what failure is, instead of failure being this, this thing that we want to avoid, this thing that we, feel is a reflection on us as a person, like a bad reflection. It's simply, sweet, I failed. How can I do it differently next time?
Yeah, you mentioned one of the things in your sharing was the difference between a growth and a fixed mindset. You want to talk a little bit about that, because I think people with a certain fixed mindset, they have a certain view on failure as if it's like a damnation against them. They failed once, and but a person with a growth mindset is something different. So it seems like you made the switch also. So what's a growth and fixed mindset about?
So a fixed mindset is where we believe that our personality, various different characteristics, various skills or attributes that we hold are fixed. So they can't change. There's nothing that we can do to, dial the lever up or down. Whereas a growth mindset is where we approach those same attributes, intelligence, skills, characteristics, whatever it might be, as something that is changeable. It's something that we can learn. It's something we can grow. It's something that we can, choose to, for example, like learning a language or learning guitar. We can engage in conscious effort to tweak or twist those attributes, and then therefore we get to reap the benefits of that exerted effort, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's a really critical thing for people, and I kind of understand why now that stress is it's not just physiological, it's psychological. So it's really how you view and think about it. If you think about it as a hit against your self-image, and it's really going to affect performance. But if you think about it from you're going to have fun, you're going to grow either way, then I think the regard is going to be very different. You study quite a bit about about performance. And about helping people navigate challenges. And you also work with some people who have to face challenging times on a rather regular basis. What have you discovered about how people can perform under pressure well, and how and what it takes for them to succeed? So how do people respond, let's say, if they're untrained under pressure, versus what happens when they're trained? So I think this would be fascinating, because you did it with the Antarctic division, you did it with first responders. You just got to find people who have the most challenging every days and work together with them. So what's it like between untrained and trained?
I think a really big piece, and obviously this doesn't lead to being able to make changes, but a really big piece is that sense of self-awareness. Because if you don't have the ability to introspect and kind of assess where you might be doing really well, but also where maybe you need some work and you need a little bit of loving on certain attributes or certain skills or whatever it might be. So that awareness piece is so bloody important. And I talk about this with Rob, my partner, a lot. When you're, for example, so he's an MMA fighter, like you said, Melv, and when you're in a really high pressure situation, whether that be internal pressures you're placing on yourself or external pressures that are around you, there's a couple of kind of things. You need to be able to control your physiology, because if you have a negative response to your stress response, then you're going to try and push it away, and it's going to get bigger, it's going to grow legs, and it's going to show up in lots of different ways. So, for example, one of Rob's teammates kind of had a couple of times where he kept on getting a bit of a freeze response when he was fighting, and he had that, internal pressure he was placing on himself, but his response to his stress response is, this is bad, I can't handle this, I got to push it away. And what that leads to is a freeze state. There's lots of different things in that space, but
what happens to a person if they're in the freeze state? So it's almost as if that they cannot access all the resources that they have. So I'm quite sure it's the same for the Antarctic people, the first responders. You could train to do everything, but in the freeze state, because of the internal dialogue, just you access nothing. Would that be fair?
Yeah, so you shut down. So when you're in a freeze state, your body is essentially, so, if you think about animals, they go into a freeze state, so they play dead because the threat that is around them, they perceive that they can't respond to effectively. So they're like, okay, I'm going to play dead and then hopefully it'll go away. And that same kind of response shows up. And I worked a lot with sexual assault victims or survivors of sexual assault. And the freeze state is really common amongst that population or individuals that have experienced that, because they've lived such fear and such terror that freeze state is a protective mechanism. It's a coping kind of strategy that their body kind of just goes straight away to, because that's what worked in the moment.
Fear, freeze. So how do you break someone out, whether they're sexual assault victims or MMA fighters, out of fear, freeze? So what exactly goes on to break them out of that?
Yeah, so you can't think your way out of a freeze state, and you can't think your way out of anxiety, or you can't think your way out of stress. You can think yourself into those states, but it's really, really hard to think yourself out of those states. So that's where it's really important to work with the body. So some techniques that you might use across all of those populations might be grounding exercises. So working with the senses. So there's one called 5 senses grounding. So it's simply 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can taste. 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. So you're going through the sensory elements so you reconnect in that moment, rather than being in that space of, what's going to happen, where am I going to go, like all of those future kind of focused thoughts.
I think right there is just amazing, because I think just that alone, it sounds so simple, right? But that alone is going to be really, really useful for people whose brains are maybe in addiction, in fear, because most of them, you're absolutely right. I think for everyone listening, just said something pretty amazing, because yes, we can think ourselves into certain states, so we don't have to move our bodies, but we can just like replay negative images, memories, etc., and put ourselves in certain states. But sometimes I've also found it really, really hard to think ourselves out of those states. It is like really, really hard. and most of the time when you have people that are depressed, or people that are suffering from some addictions, most of the time the advice they get is like, you know what, just be stronger. Come on, man, just think happy thoughts. It's not as easy.
Nope.
Yeah, but to actually not do that, but just move the body, so you shift yourself out of the mental state, is perhaps the answer. So those are the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Do you have any one else? And when did you discover that when you move the physiology, it can affect the psychology, perhaps actually really powerfully?
Well, it was so throughout my master's, it's very much a focus on cognitive techniques. So they're all the top-down techniques. And when I started, so my first job out of uni was both at Tasmania Police and at Sexual Assault Support Service. And both of the people or the populations that I was working in or with in each of those spaces, simply implementing cognitive techniques, it just doesn't cut the mustard. It doesn't work. You need both. So you need those top-down techniques and the bottom-up to work with the physiology. So it was a really steep learning curve in terms of reshifting my training and seeking additional training where it was a little bit more kind of embodied and somatic, at the same time as I work so much better than working with the body. And that is also through my own personal learning and my personal experience. As I said, I, experienced quite intense anxiety for a really big chunk of my life. And, I always implemented thought-based techniques and tried to kind of, change my thoughts. And it was only when I, like I said, went to Dave's and kind of shifted my relationship with stress, as well as I did a functional and therapeutic breathwork course with physio. And from that moment, I had a daily consistent practice of moving my body, whether it be stretching or yoga, implementing breathing techniques. So various different breathing techniques on a daily basis. I was consistent. And that's the big thing. You have to be consistent with these things. It's not something
you have cracked the code. So let's talk a little bit. Yeah, no, I think that's a critical thing, right? Because I think what you're saying and what you're sharing is the fact that if you do these things, you put your body in a state, especially consistently. So we'll talk about your routines in just a bit. But if you do this, you put your body in a calm state because of the physiological things that you do every day. And then when stress comes, then you're in a much better state to deal with it. Because what we just mentioned was how you can use the body to deal in the moment with stress. So what we don't want is just people to, all right, I'm not really stressed. I need to do that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 thing that Paris talks about. But what you want to do is to have a practice. So what constitutes your daily calming, practice that you realize can put you in a good space?
Yeah. So every morning, so I used to be one of those people that wakes up at, 5:15 in the morning, goes to the gym straight away, worked 6 days a week, kind of was very bang, 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 bang. Now I wake up, I get sunlight in my eyes, I walk the dogs, have a nice kind of slow start to the morning so that I'm not kind of abruptly shifting my nervous system into a go, go, go kind of state. I'll have breakfast. So, my body isn't going into that. For me, I find that works. I need to have breakfast the first thing in the morning, particularly before coffee, because I can't have coffee straight up on an empty tummy. In terms of like general daily practices, I will do between a 30 and 40 minute focused, conscious breathing practice each day. I go to the gym for about 1 to 2 hours a day, 1 to 1.5 hours a day. That'll include some stretching, as well as social connection to me is so important, as well as, getting out in nature. So I feel the best when I'm by the beach. So going for swims, feeling my feet in the sand, I've got a golden retriever, seeing him kind of all goofy running across wherever we might be, whether it's an oval or, the sand at a beach or whatever it is. He's such a goof and I love watching it. The people in my life, it's really important to me to have good, open relationships, good, transparent communication within my relationships and feeling supported, and also having that kind of sense of play and fun. I think as adults, we kind of shift away from that sense of play and fun a little bit too much, and it becomes all about like, adultness and working and having structures and routines and chasing after our goals and dreams, which is so wonderful and so great. At the same time, as I think it's really important to play games and be silly and connect with that little inner child of, all the things that we used to do when we were younger, which I believe also benefits all of that pursuit of goals and pursuit of dreams, because when you're more creative or when you're playing, you have more creativity that feeds into that kind of, for example, what you're doing with your business, that needs a lot of creativity and fun and that kind of stuff, as well as all right, let's get shit done.
Yeah, I think that one's pretty awesome. Definitely, that one's pretty awesome. And what you're talking about is life by design versus by default, because it seems that for most people, it's kind of interesting because it's the same idea in investing. So the difference between a rich person and a poor person, according to this amazing book, The Richest Man in Babylon, is the rich person first devotes money to invest, spends the rest. The poor person spends everything, then whatever left, if there's anything left, he invests. So it seems that for you have done the exact same thing for health and for performance. You design a life first and foremost for all the wonderful things, then, you fill in the rest with work, etc. But for most people, what they do is, let's go and do work first. Whatever time left, if there's any, we will go and exercise. There's never time left. We will go and hang out with friends. There's never time left. And we'll go and do fun things. There's never time left. So you chose to design a life that fit all of these criteria and stuff. So let's talk a little bit about why did you choose to do that, and how do you design a life that enables you to set up all of these pieces and then fill in the gaps with everything else also. Because I think that one's critical, because the last thing we want is for people to listen to this podcast and go, that chick Paris, she can do it. I can do it. I'm too busy. But how the heck can she do all these things? But I think it's a design process that's really critical. So when did you come up with the idea to design this, and how did you kind of do it so that, you can fit in everything together?
I think it was kind of by accident as well as on purpose. I was working, like I said, I was working across 3 different jobs. This was at the start of last year, and I was feeling really burnt out. I was feeling incredibly anxious all the time. You wouldn't have been able to tell from the outside. I was still operating. I was still going to the gym. I was still, doing quite well at work and all of those things. But I would just get home and I would crash, and I had no energy for the people that I loved. And I had no energy for myself. And I even started for example, the gym is something that I've always loved, or moving my body has always been something that I loved. And I started hating it because I was just so exhausted.
Wow.
And so my partner, he got into this promotion in the United States. And so he was going over to the US April last year. And I thought, maybe I should go. And I was kind of tootling between. I was like, I really don't want to give up on the career opportunities that I have in Tasmania. I'm on a really good roll. I'm on a really good wicket with what I've got going on in my career space, my workspace. And what if 6 months from now, I regret this decision? I regret the decision to leave my job and go and explore the world. But yeah, so I ended up making that decision after 2 months that were quite painstaking of flip-flopping between the 2 decisions. But I just did it, and it was a challenging process of, what have I done? I kept on looping around in my mind of, have I given up on something that could have been really wonderful for my development and all of this stuff? But I just kept bringing it back to, okay, am I happy now with the life I've created? And the answer was no. And so I was like, sweet, well, let's keep on exploring. Let's keep on, having adventure. And a really big pull for me was having adventure and play in my life at that point in time. And so I kept on doing that. I then went to Spain and did my yoga teacher training, which was 4 weeks of, I didn't have my phone. It was 3 hours a day of yoga and meditation and movement and theory, 6 days a week. And that was just a really beautiful reset that allowed me to reappraise some of my thought processes. And that was a really big shift for me to go, I can live differently. I don't have to. Like, if we think about our nervous system on a spectrum, with both parasympathetic nervous system and sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system being the rest and digest break kind of system, and the sympathetic being that upregulating, get shit done kind of system. Both really important, but, if you're living in the sympathetic nervous system all the time, which I was, you're never going to have enough energy for the things that you love, or you're going to be highly strung all the time. And I was very much highly strung all the time. And so having that 4-week reset just kind of made me reappraise those ways of living. And I was like, all right, I can actually do this differently. And it kind of happened little bit by little bit, but then I did my functional and therapeutic breathwork course, and I saw Dave, and I had job opportunities kind of come up along the way that allowed me to live, flexibly. And I was able to travel whilst also working remotely, which was perfect, because then I could have, a financial income, which was really important to be able to do the things that I was doing and also to live. But then I was able to travel. I was able to meet new people, have new ideas and explore. And that's when I was able to, I suppose, create that life that enabled me to, like you said, and I've never kind of thought of it that way, but that is what I do, like put my health first.
Yeah. Because I can tell you, I know a lot of people who would listen, and well, I want to address that, because the last thing you want is for people to go, the Paris Baker, she's got so much good things, I'm not like her, I can't do this. Because the moment they listen and they dismiss it, then they just go back to their ordinary way of life, which is not helpful. But if they realize that you are not someone unique and special, which, magically this thing happened, but instead you went to design all of these things and made it happen for yourself, then perhaps you can empower people to think about, hey, are there ways that I can prioritize some of these things so that, I can live differently? A lot of great things. You see me typing a lot of great things here. Let's talk a little bit about burnout also, because I think burnout is very similar to stress. And, you mentioned a few things here. I got 4 to 5 pointers here as you're talking. The idea of burnout, right? We can talk about burnout. And I love how you mentioned about going to yoga and doing all of these things. And you started living according to your core values and a certain vision also, which we can talk about, etc. But let's talk a little bit about burnout. How often do you witness burnout? What does burnout look like? What kind of advice do you hear people get about burnout? Usually not very helpful. Like, come on, suck it up, man. Or I'll give you more money.
Yeah.
I'm quite sure. I'm quite sure you can deal with that. So, what do you notice and see about burnout? How do people react in a burnout? What kind of poor advice do they receive about burnout, and what should people do if they feel like they're about to burn out? So.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that a lot more people are probably experiencing burnout than, well, maybe not a lot more than we realize. But, I've definitely got quite a few people that are quite close to me that are currently in that space. And, the impacts of that mean that they can be quite reactive, quite irritable, just exhausted all the time, not really present with the people that they love. That kind of snappy feeling when you do have a conversation with them. They have to be really efficient so you don't feel like there's quality time spent. And then the impacts on that individual is, like we were talking about, that spectrum of parasympathetic to sympathetic nervous system. They're always, and this is the sympathetic side, they're always operating up here. They're always in that space of go, 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 go. And what that often means is that when there's a time or when there's a space of, sitting still, then those thoughts are still running. The physiology is still running. They're like, oh, I should be doing something. I should be achieving, or I should be pushing, or I should be doing more. And so even when you're resting, you're not resting. You might be then scrolling on your phone to kind of stimulate your mind, because you can't just sit and be and sit in peace or kind of experience a level of boredom. And that's not recovery. And so then that cycle kind of just goes on and on and on and on. And oftentimes, there's that, I suppose, it depends on the society that we're in, but there's you work for however many weeks of the year, and you might get 2 to 4 weeks where you can go and have a holiday. And then that's meant to reset that burnout. But then you just return to that same weekly cycle or that same weekly routine that allowed that burnout to be a thing. It allowed that burnout to, exist in your body and exist in your mind. And so 2 to 4 weeks where you just try and go, sweet, I'm going to go on a holiday and rest and recover, it doesn't just reset that. You need to actually reshape and change your daily practice or your weekly practice of how you approach your work life kind of balance, your work, fun, life, social, like all those things.
I suggest also that for some of the people, burnout might actually, you mentioned about mindset, burnout might be an opportunity to reflect also on a few things. Like, is this work really in line, or is this way of living really in line with my core values and vision? So so I thought that was kind of good, because I was writing some notes here, right? The one thing I struck to me was when you went for some of the yoga retreats and stuff, it allowed you to unplug. It's probably the same philosophy under the Eat, Pray, Love book. It takes a certain kind of tragedy for people to, you don't have to run to Bali and India to do those kind of things. But in a way, it's kind of like leaving a so-called familiar environment to go to a place where you can be by yourself and reevaluate who you are, what's important to you, what kind of life you want to lead. And it seemed like you went through that entire process. So it seems like, people might go to Bali, India, some people do it after heartbreak, some people do it after a loss of a loved one, whatever it is, but they all seem to go through the same process of re-evaluation. So what was that process for you like, where you re-evaluated, connected with yourself, and started thinking, about values, vision, who I am also, which ironically is one of the things that Dave covered also, right? Writing the values and vision, which is so basic, but not a lot of people do. So what was that process like for you? What did you discover?
Yeah, I suppose so. I suppose values, like you said, are incredibly important, and they are kind of little guideposts or signposts whereby we can, act accordingly and live our lives in a valued, rich, and meaningful way. And for me, the biggest, or two of the biggest and most important things to me are my relationships and my health and well-being. And when I noticed that the way that I was living my life wasn't allowing me to, or enabling me to show up in my relationships in a way that I wanted to, which is having, wonderful conversations and listening to my friends and my family's issues, or going out for hikes and playing and doing all of that stuff because I just didn't have the energy, as well as I wasn't able to do my daily kind of practices of whether it be exercise, yoga, breathing, like all those things, when I wasn't incorporating those elements that allowed me to feel healthy and well and vibrant. Because you can be healthy, but having like that energy and that excitable sweet, like I'm excited about life, I noticed that they weren't present. And so through the process of, like you said, unplugging, disconnecting, going and adventuring and going overseas and meeting new people, that allowed me to really hone in on and be much more deliberate about, these are the things that are important to me and I don't want to compromise. And I was even having this thought in the shower the other week, and I was like, just reflecting off the last 18 months to 2 years and how important the people, I love are to me. And that's not something I ever want to compromise ever again. And I want to, like, if you think about going all the way to the end of your life, you're not going to reflect on back on your life and think, I wish I could have worked more. For me, anyway, it's going to be, I wish I could have spent more quality, wonderful time with, the people I love. Or hopefully, because of how I'm living my life, it's going to be, I had so many great relationships and I had so many wonderful experiences with the people I loved.
I think that was really critical. Just reevaluating what matters to you, and and having that priority also, because I think sometimes in society they prioritize certain values and vision for us. When here in Asian society, we have our parents prioritizing, all right, get a good job, get a good pay, that's the most important, screw your friends and your happiness, that's not important. And we start living according to someone else's values. Then afterwards we realize, wait a minute, this doesn't make me happy. Why am I doing this? Yeah,
and I had values explained to me quite nicely. I remember I had a coach about 2 years ago, and they explained values. It's really important to get clear on your values, but values are also kind of like a world globe. You've got your values that are all important to you, and they'll be important. Ones that are kind of, say, on this side of the globe facing me are the ones that are really important to me at this point in time, and perhaps that is work, or you're creating your own business, health and well-being, family. And perhaps I'm like, okay, I really need to put a lot of effort into creating my own business and getting that kind of grit and determination and drive. And family kind of, it's still important, but it's just falling by the wayside for this 2-month period while I get up and running. But then I'm like, okay, I've got that up and running. I'm going to have some more family time because that's something that's been lacking, and I need to incorporate that back into my life. So all your values are always there on the globe, but they might shift according to whatever is present at that point in time, and they can always shift back. But that's why I think it's important to be clear on your values, that you can go, this one's been lacking, and that's maybe why I'm feeling a bit depleted, because I need a little bit more family time, or I need a little bit more investment in my health and well-being, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think the perfect equilibrium balance is not always easy. It's a perfect scenario. I'm not sure if it always exists. We would love for everything to be in perfect harmonious equilibrium, but I don't think it's always the case. So I think let's talk a little bit about nutrition also. Did you change the way you eat, the way you live, in order to regain more sanity in your life and escape burnout?
Not with food. I've always eaten well. I've always really loved kind of whole foods, like really good quality meat, cheese, fruit, veggies, like little treats as well. But for me, I'm not much of a sugar fiend. I'm more of a cheese fiend. So I love me some cheese, but I've always found that I've not had issues with my diet. I really enjoy just making it simple. I love a steak. I love a steak.
That's good. Let's talk about, if you're to analyze, and let's say I have to get you a person right now who is probably Paris 3 years ago. There's a gal, she is living by society standards. She's supposedly doing a good job. She works really, really hard because that's what she thinks she's supposed to do. And right now you had to go and heal her. She might be burned out, but she can't tell. She's like, everything we discussed so far, she's stressed, but she can't tell. How would you go about helping somebody like this right now to make those changes? Because they might be in a state right now, for some reason they're drawn to our little conversational podcast here, and they're like, wow, okay, where do I begin? Like, do I quit my job now? Like, what do I do? Like, what would you say?
So, you don't necessarily have to do like my kind of what I did in terms of it was quitting my job and going overseas. That could be an option for some people, but not an option for everyone, because I know people have families, they've got mortgages, like all of those bits and pieces. Yeah. I would say it's about gentle, simple habits done consistently. So it could be, for me, for example, I really enjoy scents and smells. And I think having incense is a really wonderful way of just providing that sensory element that grounds you back into the moment. But it's, for example, I'm working with some of my clients around this at the moment as well, and incorporating those simple habits on a daily basis. And we're starting small. We're doing 2 minutes before they go to sleep of focused and conscious breathing. And then that, if they can achieve that 2 minutes, because we can all make 2 minutes for ourselves. And then you have that established habit or pattern over 7 days or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever it is. And you can slowly and gently build and build and build. That kind of creates that little nook in your day and creates that neural pattern that lets you know, I did it. I achieved that. And it felt nice. It felt good. A little kind of mental flag in how you reset that barometer of your nervous system. I was feeling here and I now feel just down there. And that reinforces the habit of, okay, I'll do it again tomorrow. And then maybe because it felt good, I might do it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever it might be. And then that one simple, gentle habit will transform into other ways. So, for example, you mentioned nutrition, which is such an important part of, feeling well, feeling good, having like mental focus, feeling energized, not feeling that kind of lethargic, thick kind of feeling. And it might be, I noticed that my body felt a little bit better when I did that small 2 minutes of breathing. Maybe I'll start increasing my hydration. Maybe I'll try and aim for 2 liters of water a day. Or maybe I might start including just eggs and avocado and something really beautiful and nourishing for breakfast. So it's around kind of creating all of these simple, gentle habits in all of these key elements or key pillars of your health, and doing them consistently. It's not complicated. It's not anything like, and I think Dave says this really well. It's, we like to create complex solutions to simple problems. And if we just do the really simple stuff, the really simple basal stuff well, we can start to work on the, if we think about it like a pillar or a triangle, we get those base blocks working well, then we can build on the next bits and pieces on the way up. But that base block is the foundation of our health. It's if we're not eating well, if we're not moving our body, if we're not getting sunlight, if we're not having fulfilling social relationships, if we're not eating well and hydrating, if we're not sleeping well, then all the other things might feel a little bit shittier.
Yeah. I think that is exceptionally well said. I think just wow, those are really, really they're very critical. I think just for everybody listening, I just want to keep the conversations super practical. So just in case people are like, oh my God, this sounds great, but I'll just go back to my ordinary life, But if we cover a lot of these practical steps, then people can realize they can start small and they can make a lot of these changes in their lives. And I just love how, even though you are a psychologist, which means you work a lot in the mind, but a lot of the stuff that we have spoken about during our short conversation has a lot been about physiological. And I just think that, sometimes that alone is an amazing realization that yes, the mind moves the body, but sometimes the body, when moved, can change the mind. When you do some of these things, it can really alter the mind. I think because otherwise we'll just get stuck in the loop of like, why do I have this negative thought patterns, and then they try to think themselves out of that, which I think they will conclude it rarely works. Are there any realizations research wise you have about performance, sustainability? Because I just find this like I know you just do this on and on every single day. Are there any other realizations or things that you have been toying with or hypothesizing recently about performance, the mind, sustainability, and more?
I suppose so, even, and this is something that my partner and I have been talking about quite a bit lately, because he's been kind of really pushing that upper limit of peak performance for the last 2 years or more than 2 years. But, he's been he's been in a promotion and having to be in fight camp after fight camp for like 18 months. And that's a lot of pressure on your mind and your body. And that kind of idea of, again, it's not a new idea. It's not a complex idea, but really incorporating that rest and really incorporating, it's not all about pushing. And it's about knowing when to push and knowing when to pull back. And in relation to that, it's, for example, when we have certain thoughts and we have, when we have certain thoughts, that does have that flow-on effect to how our physiology responds. And so if we're always thinking that we're not doing enough, which a lot of people that are high performers and a lot of people with perfectionistic tendencies are doing, if we're always thinking that we're not doing enough, then we're also constantly exhausting ourselves. And so that's why that kind of mental piece is also really important. It's really important to work with the body, and it's really important to work with our physiology.
So what should they be thinking? Because I can count just literally every single high achiever has that sense of lack, which means like, if they made $10 million, they're like, hey man, I know somebody made 20. If they have 100, they're like, I know somebody has 200. They're just like, it's never enough. So and I guess in some way they justify it because they say that gap and that tension allows me to keep pushing. But of course, you're right, it leads to exhaustion. So what do you think what's a better way?
And something you said that was really key there was, I'm comparing myself to someone else. And I think when we get stuck in that comparison game, then we're always going to lose, because there's always going to be someone that's doing something maybe slightly better than us or a lot better than us. And so if it's a comparison in terms of a lack kind of mindset, I don't have this, then it's going to be laden with those negative or depleting emotions. Whereas if we transform that into something like being so grateful for how much effort you've put in, and so grateful for being able to, if it's, the $10 million or whatever it is, or it's, for example, in my partner's case, winning a, belt last year, you kind of just go, sweet, I'm so grateful for the amount of effort I put in. And I'm so stoked that I was able to, achieve that outcome because of what I put into it. And then if you look at that kind of comparison and go, okay, what about me? What new goals can I set? What new goals do I want to set within myself? And seeing someone else do better can be a motivator for that. Absolutely. But I think it's about switching that piece of, it's not something that's lacking in you, but, they have their complete own and different journey. So what is it about you that you want to then reshape and reform to then set a new goal for yourself, rather than going, oh, I don't have that, therefore I'm less than, if that makes sense? Yeah,
no, that makes perfect sense. Just really, I think the answer is just great, like gratitude and just really getting in touch with yourself, because otherwise you could achieve the world's greatest accomplishment and still feel a sense of lack. And of course, then the tank is always empty and you just can't keep running on an empty fuel tank.
Yeah. And if you're also constantly I think, and this comes back to the growth and fixed mindset, if you're constantly evaluating your own achievements purely on the outcome rather than the process and rather than the efforts that you've put into it, then you might be stoked for a period because you got a really good outcome, but then you're straight back to what's the next thing? Where can I, do better, grow more, earn more, whatever your goal is. Whereas if you're kind of focused more so on the process and the enjoyment of that process and congratulating yourself for that effort that you actually invest along the way, then, yes, you'll have ups and downs and you might be disappointed at times and stoked at other times, but you'll shift your mindset away from, oh, they're doing better than me, therefore I'm not as good as them.
I think that was really, really critical, really, really important. I think, wow. Paris, I think we have covered a lot of stuff here. I think this is really, really amazing. Just covering so much in terms of helping people realize that at the end of the day, just the way the mind works, the way the body works. I think this is really, really amazing. I've always actually, since I met you, told you that this body of information should not just be contained to first responders, the Antarctic Division, the police force, sexual assault victims. I think actually a lot of entrepreneurs and just a lot of people in general, just high performers actually, need this stuff the most, because as we run through about 50 minutes of conversation so far, all of these ideas, I can tell you that as a person that knows a lot of high performers, majority of them, the ideas they have about everything we covered are completely opposite. They do not believe in going out in nature, play and fun and core values, and they deny that they are stressed. Burnout, what is that? They don't take care of themselves, and they just the most like I kind of mentioned in New Zealand, I was one of those who live off booze and Red Bull and very little sleep, and the key is they might think they are able to perform for a while, but I'm not sure they can last very long in that kind of manner.
And that kind of sustainable performance is really important.
And whether they're truly happy also, because then
whether you're truly happy.
Yeah, and they achieve some of these things, they're not happy also, because they compare, and so like that's one way of living. But hopefully our little conversation here has inspired people to have a different way of living. So Paris, if people wanted to get in touch with you and learn more about this wonderful stuff, where can they do so?
You could send me an email. I'm actually just in the process of starting up my own kind of business bits and pieces. It's called Embodied Health and Performance. So in the process, I've got all my ducks in a row. I just need to put it live, but you can also get in touch with me via Instagram.
All right. Awesome. You can, I think it's Paris Baker, just literally her name over there.
Yeah. I'll send you through as well. I've created a new business one, so I can send that one through to you as well.
Awesome. I think this kind of information is going to be helpful for a lot of people. Paris, thank you so much for your time. This was really, really awesome. And for everyone else watching, she mentioned so many amazing things. I just think a lot of things for us to take in, whether it's gratitude, whether it's different things that we can practice more self-care, self-love about. I think it's wonderful. Thank you so much, Paris.
No worries. Thanks, Mel. Have fun in New Zealand.
Bye, guys.